So Anthony and Chelsea, thank you for your comments. I appreciated them. So first of all, Anthony, it's interesting that you mentioned Gutenberg's printing press. Or I think you just mentioned the printing press, but nonetheless. I was just reading an article dealing with the use of technology in the Arab Spring, and one interesting quote said, "The social media phenomena has the same effect as Gutenberg's printing press did during the 1400s in Europe. It's allowed for less political oppression and a more open public sphere because acts of tyranny cannot be hidden. So essentially, it creates a shared awareness of what's taking place." So I'm glad you brought up that point. To answer your first question, I'm not very good at making predictions, but I'd say that this Arab Spring will go as far as the West will take it. And I guess by that comment, you can tell I'm not a firm believer this movement was the result of solely an organic uprising, but I think it was much more of a hybrid concoction between the Arab people and the West. For instance, the Libyan uprising would not have been successful. Well, I shouldn't say wouldn't have been successful, but it most likely wouldn't have been as successful without NATO's help. Gaddafi and his forces had the rebels pinned down when the airstrikes started, so that greatly set them back. And even though we didn't see Western military force in Egypt, we did see great condemnation from the Western leaders towards Mubarak, and the urgent calls for him to step down. In contrast with this, we can see the 2009 Iranian election protests, where there was a massive uprising, yet the Basij force was able to control these elements. And here you also find a complete absence of Western intervention, or even condemnation for that matter. So when the West becomes involved, we see quote-unquote success for the people, yet in the absence, the regimes in power maintain that power. Events this large don't just happen in our day and age without the world's only superpower having some say in it. But this is just my opinion. Dealing with your second question, I believe there are many things that need to be done to have a functional democratic government in the Middle East. First, they need to somehow remove the jihadists from the scenario. I know I always go back to that point, but it's so important. And that includes influence from Iran as well. Second, they need to develop a sense of civic responsibility, and what becomes and becoming an active, informed citizen. But once again, this comes back to the concept of education. Without education, it's difficult to be a responsible citizen. Also, when I say democracy, I don't just mean a system such as we have in America, but one in which the broader term applies, in which the people rule. Perhaps Turkey should be a model to look into for them, but then again, that would call for a mostly secular society, and that's exactly what the people of Egypt and Libya are escaping from now. So, thanks for your questions. Hope I answered them as well as I answered them as well as I could. I hope they're good enough. Alright, thanks.